a White House and Washington reporter for the publication Politico. Daniel, good to have you on the program. So the judge who's pushed back the sentencing said Trump will be sentenced on September 18th, quote, if such is still necessary. Now, this sentencing delay coupled with Monday's Supreme Court ruling, does it mean Trump's likely to not face any legal consequences from this conviction or have that conviction overturned entirely?
Well, he was always going to appeal this conviction by the jury of his peers, and that's a process that takes often a year or two. And so they were going to argue that it was not a good case. But if he loses the election in November, then he could definitely face jail time in a number of these cases. But this is another victory for him. He's had a string of victories, starting with the debate, then the Supreme Court, and now this. But it also comes closer to the election. And so if he gets a sentence, this reminds, in September, it reminds people of this guilty conviction. And it's, I think it's wise optics not to have it 4 days before the Republican convention, which was going to be July 15th, 4 days after the July 11th sentencing.
So, Daniel, Trump, as you say, hailing this a victory on the Truth social media platform, he said total exoneration. Does this play well for him ahead of November's election? How will he use it in his campaigning?
Well, he's always painting himself as the victim and saying to Americans who are less economically privileged, people who have not benefited from globalization in the heartland of America, that he feels their pain, basically. But this is not a sure thing that he's not going to get a sentence for those convictions, because it's hard to argue that paying off a porn star was an official act. And the Supreme Court did say that unofficial acts, any president, including Donald Trump, they do not get immunity for that. And so it's not a complete and total immunity, but it definitely expands the power of the presidency, and he's going to use this for his advantage. He's only risen in the polls since all of these trials have started.
I want to look at what we've seen play out over the last, not even the last week in the United States, from that debate, which many are saying was so disastrous for Biden, the White House having to come out and say, well, it was a bad night. And even some in his own Democratic Party saying he should step down and let somebody else run. If Biden, and of course it's a big if he was to step down as the nominee, who is the likely replacement for him?
So it would be a wide open field. The Vice President Harris would, of course, put her hat in the ring, basically, but there's concerns that she's not a good enough politician, that she's not electable, that she actually does worse in the polls against Donald Trump. And so if Democrats are trying to save their chances in November, picking her might be folly, but they're going to look to people like California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who could bring the state of Michigan, likely, which is a very important swing state, and then people like Pete Buttigieg. And so any Democrat who is ambitious and thinks he or she has the right stuff would, of course, put their name forward, and then there would be a contested convention. They would try to win all the delegates because they can't rerun all the primaries they had in a compressed 3 or 5 week window.
Daniel Lippman, really good to get your analysis and break that all down for us live from Washington. Thanks so much, Daniel.